and some of the challenges that they were having with one of their team members, and how they liked their team member, but their team member just wasn't necessarily somebody that they fully trusted to handle their business. And so when things hit the fan, that team member wasn't somebody they really counted on. And so this keeps coming up with my clients. Another one of my clients, they hired a couple of people and then she had to fire them right away. And so I wanted to share something that I thought was really impactful from a book called Who, I believe. The book's name is Who. And it talks about one thing that you can do. So if there's one thing that you're going to do to improve your hiring, trying to get this hat straight, if there's one thing you're going to do to try to get your hiring up to date in 2021, the one thing I would recommend is go deep on references. I'm going to give you a story. So I was hiring a manager for my business, and as I got through the first set of interview reference questions, everything was great. The guy's super awesome. He's a hard worker. He does this, he does that. I was like, all right, cool. Dude's on point. One of the tips that I learned, though, was whenever you start doing reference checks, you always ask the person you're interviewing and have them sign it for legalities, and ask if you can ask the references for additional references. I'm going to repeat that. Ask the person you're interviewing if you can ask their references for additional references. Here's why. The first set of people that you get are always going to be the best, right? And ask for, you should ask for like 2 to 3 of their managers. You should ask for 2 to 3 personal references, 2 to 3 people that reported to them, and then 2 to 3 people that they reported to. So management reported to, sometimes there's gaps in there. District managers, right? You want to spend some time here. The challenging part is that this is time consuming. You got to call and you got to leave voice messages. You got to leave text messages. You got to call, you got to leave voice messages. You got to leave text messages. So it's a very consuming process. And I get it. It sucks. But you got to do it. And you have to ask similar questions. So in the book, Who, there's an outline. I don't have it in front of me, so I don't know who wrote it. It's at my office, so I don't have it in front of me, but I'm pretty sure you can Google it. If you're halfway intelligent enough to hire somebody, I'm sure you can use Google. Here's what I found out. First set of references. The guy was legit. He was always hitting his goals. He was always doing this. He was always working with people, always great with the floor. Second set of references, right? One of the guys had just got laid off because of COVID. Just got laid off. He's like, well, I don't work for this company anymore. So let me tell you the truth about this guy. I'm like, oh shit, what's about to happen? He's like, the guy was stealing money from us. The guy was taking clients and pocketing the cash. The guy was lying to management. The guy was showing up off hours so that he could steal other people's clients. And then he would charge them, take the cash, and then they would come back in and say, hey, we have 5 sessions. They're like, no, you don't. And they're like, well, we paid this guy. And it took a couple of weeks for them to figure it out. But the guy was actually laid off, and he was fired, not laid off. And he was a thief. So he was fired. He was a thief. And I wouldn't have found that out because everybody that I was talking to that he had referred had said good things about him because they didn't know, because they didn't work in that current company. And so when people say when people are looking for jobs and they don't want to give you the current employer's information, right? When people are looking for jobs and they don't want to give you the current employer's information, that's a red flag number 1. Well, we don't want them to find out that we're going to potentially leave. Hey, you're leaving one way or the other. When I told my real estate clients, they're like, well, it's hard for us to pack up our whole house, Vikram, and live like this because, we still live here. And we want to feel like it's our home. I'm like, you put it on the market, it's no longer your home. When you go to the job market, right, you're looking for a job. It's no longer, you're no longer employed by the other company. You're already on the way out. So you have to be able to talk to their current employer. And when people don't want you to talk to the current employer, red flag number 1, right? Red flag number 1. I always want to grow my people so that they can leave me, but I always want to provide them enough value so that they don't leave me. I'm going to say that again. I want to grow my people enough so that they can leave me and get better jobs. But I want to provide enough value that as I grow, they can grow with me so that they don't need to leave me. That's a big distinction from what most companies do. Most companies want to give people the least amount of training so that they just don't screw up enough that they fuck up your business. So When you hire somebody, it's so important that you spend time on this one area, right? Ask for references, ask the references for references, ask the references for references. It might take you the better part of 2 days to get the work done because you're calling messages, calling back messages, calling messages, calling back messages. I promise you though, if you do this, you will have results that are amazing. If you don't do this, you're going off of gut feeling. I like the person, but I don't know. And we always start to like the person before we do the references, the reference checks. And that's why we don't do them, because it takes work and we like the person. We don't want to find out the bad things. We don't want to hear the stuff that's going to maybe make us have to go back to the drawing board and look for somebody else. But here's the thing that sucks. Have you ever hired somebody, spent 2.5, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks training them, putting them through the system, introducing them to your clients, introducing them to your team, introducing them to all these people, and then you realize 8 weeks in that they're not the right fit. 8 weeks in, you realize they're not the right fit. And then you got to let them go, and you got to unwind all that. You got to rehire somebody else. You got to retrain that person, right? Think about how much time and money and energy is spent on hiring the wrong person. How much time, money, and energy spent on the wrong person. So the number one tip, and I know you're not doing it. I know most of you aren't doing it. Maybe like 1 or 2 or 3 or 5% of people do it. I know we don't do it because it takes a lot of work and we're busy. But it's a lot easier to spend 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 hours over the course of a week to do the reference checks, do the double reference checks, do the triple reference checks, talk to all the people, ask the same questions. You know, one of the questions I always like to ask, there's certain questions you can and can't ask, obviously. But one is, you know, if you had an opportunity to hire this person again, would you? What would you hire this person to do? Before you even tell them about the job, what would you hire this person to do? And if you're hiring them for a management position and they don't say anything about them being a great manager, if you're hiring for a sales position and they're like, oh my God, they're so organized and they're great with the paperwork and admin and this and that, maybe they're not the perfect person for that position. So you can adjust, right? So I always like to ask, what would you hire this person for? And then I ask, would you hire this person again to work with you? If there's any hesitation on them saying yes right out the gate, 100%, people don't want to say no, so they'll stall. If there's any stall, I got called out yesterday by my buddy. He's asked me about something, and he's like, Vikram, you're stalling. What's the real answer? He's like, why are you stalling? Why is there hesitation in your voice? Why are you going around, right? Just go straight to the point, yes or no. And I'm, he's like, what's up? I feel you're out of alignment with your conversation. So when you hire somebody, again, this is so important because this will save you thousands of dollars in payroll. This is going to save you a potential backlash of them asking for unemployment. This is going to save you time of introducing them to your team and time of introducing them to your customers. It's going to save you time on training. It's going to give you more energy because a good person energizes you. A bad person brings you down because you're like, I don't want to deal with this. And if you've ever had to fire somebody, I've fired a lot of people, hopefully not have to fire too many more in my life, but when you have to fire somebody, it sucks. So use this advice. I love you. Have an amazing day. Happy 2021, baby. The best is yet to come, and you are going to find amazing people that want to work in your company, that want to. Oh, here's another great question. I was on Clubhouse. Hey, if you guys are on Clubhouse, add me at Coach Vikram Deal, at Coach Vikram Deal. I was on Clubhouse yesterday, and there's these guys that were in this room for like 10 hours. It was insane. They're just freaking going on and on and on. And one of the questions he asked, he said, when you're interviewing people, and I haven't used it yet, but it just sounds really good. If you're interviewing people and you say, hey, what was the question? Oh, let me think about it. If I gave you $10 million, what would you with the $10 million? Now, most people are going to say, oh, I'd buy a house, I'd pay off some debt, maybe buy their parents something, maybe buy their grandparents something, some people that were in their life. But if they don't say at some point during the $10 million that they would reinvest in themselves or they would reinvest in learning how to run the business better or they really love what they do so much that they'd continue to do it. If they're like, oh my God, we'd buy like a little tiki bar at the beach. Sorry, it's a little cold in here. We'd buy a little tiki bar at the beach and we'd put a little restaurant and an Airbnb there and we'd never come back to the country. Maybe they're just looking for the job for money. Maybe they're not really interested in working for you. Maybe it's just a means to the end, and they're counting the hours before they could leave work every day. So I thought that was a really powerful question. If I gave you $10 million, what would you do with it? And if there's nothing in there about your job, if there's nothing in there about upgrading their skill set because they love what they do so much and that they would do it even if they had $1 billion. Like my uncle, he's super wealthy. I said, and he doesn't need money anymore. I said, why do you do what you do? Like, why do you show up to work every day? Like, you have all the money in the world, right? You don't need to work anymore. Your kids are taken care of. Your grandkids are taken care of. You're taken care of. Like, you could literally bail out California's bullshit. Why do you show up every day? He's like, I love what I do. I'm like, but it's Saturday. He's like, I love what I do. Okay. Like, all right, that's answered that question. He loves what he does, so it's not work to him. Like, he would be bored at home sitting around like trying to figure out what to do with himself. So if you gave somebody 10 million bucks, what would they do? If they don't have a great answer that involves your company or that position, maybe not your company, but I'd love to work for a super large corporation doing what I do, and so I'm going to go back to school for 6 months and learn how to do it better, but that shows that they're interested in the position. Some good hiring tips, y'all. I think I gave you 3 hiring tips today. Reference check, reference check, reference check. So that's tip number 1. Second tip is get the references, right? Ask the reference for people that you can talk to about the person. And you got to get people. So make sure they give you 2 or 3 people, right? Because they're not going to think of who's going to give the best answers. They're just going to think of people they know that they have the phone numbers to. And then the third one is the $10 million question. All right, you guys, I love you. However you slice it, greatness is up to you. 2021 is just beginning. We're on day 3. That's 3 days you're never going to get back. So what are you going to do today to make sure that 2021 is different than 2020? If you're not making the changes right now, you're not going to make the changes later on in the world or later on in the year. So that's why I committed myself to making videos, teaching more, and trying to get information about what people need right now. So as I'm doing my consultation calls, I'm coaching my clients, I'm asking them their problems, and then I'm trying to create videos, or I'm using resources, or I'm doing research on how to help with those. And then I'm trying to give it back. So we can all keep evolving faster and faster.